Hannah Spiegelman. I'm the interviewer.
I'm Alison Susser. I'm the note taker.
And we're here with Katie Hall, who is the videographer. And we are interviewing Rosa Marx, and this is the first interview. Okay, so first I just want to start with what city you were born in and what was your birth year?
Okay, I was born in Vienna, Austria.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want the date?
Yes.
Okay. January 23rd, 1924.
Okay. And what members were in your family?
What's that again?
What members were in your family? You had your parents, do you have any
And
siblings?
myself, I had no siblings.
Okay.
Okay.
So just your father and your mother.
Right.
Did your family have an occupation that...
Occupation?
Yeah.
Yes. My parents were merchants.
Okay.
They were in the food business.
Mm-hmm.
They had a retail and wholesale foods.
And did you help them at all with their business? Or
Well, I was very young,
Yeah.
but sometimes when it was very busy, I would get behind the cash register, and I was pretty good at making change and, handling cash.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I used to do, and I used to love it, used to meet customers.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any other relatives living near you, like aunts and uncles or grandparents?
Yeah, I never knew my grandparents, because my grandparents, the only living grandparent I had was my grandmother, and she died when I was 5 years old, and she lived in Poland, and I never met her. So, and my two grandfathers died before World War I, and my father's mother died in childbirth when she had her second child, which was my father's brother.
Mm-hmm. So you were just with your parents?
Yeah, but my mother had brothers and sisters. Okay. One brother lived in New York, and my father also had a sister who lived in not in New York. I said New York, I meant Vienna, and and my father also had a sister who lived first with us when she was single, and then he married her off to a very nice man, and she had a family.
So did you have cousins that you would spend
Yes,
time with?
I had two cousins from my mother's side. They were both quite a bit older than I. My one cousin, who was 10 years older than I, went to Israel before Hitler time in Vienna. He was an ardent Zionist. And my cousin, Benny, she worked in my father's and mother's business. So I saw almost every day because she came to work in our business.
And so you were close and
yeah, very close. I imitated everything she did, and I used to know all about her boyfriends, and she used to give me books to read that usually 10 and 11 years old girls don't read, but I loved to read, and I learned a lot, and I was very, how should I say, mature for my age.
Was your family religious growing up?
No, they were sort of semi-religious. My father had been very religious as a young man, but then when he went to World War I, he assimilated into the army and became entirely different. Okay. My father, as a matter of fact, came from a very, very Hasidic sect called the Belzer Rabbi. It's B-L-S-E-R, Rabbi family, clan.
Okay. So you then became religious later on, but you wouldn't go to temple as a child?
We celebrated holidays, and we, and we felt very Jewish, and we felt very close to establishing a homeland in Israel because my parents believed in that.
Did you celebrate Shabbat every Friday?
Well, to a certain extent, because my parents' business had to be open. We were in a completely Christian neighborhood, and the store had to be open.
You were in a Christian neighborhood, but did you have Jewish friends, or were you...
No, I didn't have any Jewish friends because all my school mates were Christian, except for one girl who came later, was the second Jewish girl in the whole school.
What was school like for you? Did you enjoy it?
Pardon me?
Did you enjoy going to school?
Yeah, I was a very good student. I even still have some of my report cards.
So it was something enjoyable to...
I mean, I liked school very much. The disappointment was when the annexation of Austria came to Germany in March 1938. Suddenly all my best friends became my enemies. It's like, it's the most amazing thing. But of course the tragedy is that the Catholic Church used to bring in a priest for religious services. I had to leave the room. And this priest instilled in them that the Jews are guilty of the murder of Christ. So one day, for instance, I came to class and the girls said to me, "Why did you kill our God?" I said, "Your God?" "Yes, Jesus." I said, "Jesus himself was a Jew, and I certainly wasn't there, and I don't know who killed him." But this is what was instilled in those children, and that's very, very sad. Today, of course, the Catholic Church is entirely different, but that's how it was.
Did you experience any other events?
Discrimination.
Were you discriminated against?
Yeah, the way the people spoke about Jewish people, for instance, my father and mother also had a retail business. So I would go and visit one of my Christian girlfriends. I'd be in the house and the mother would say to the child, "Go down to the Jew and buy this and this." I mean, you know, you would say, "Go down to Mr. So-and-so and buy this," but was their way of living. It's hard to believe, but that's how it was.
So you only had Christian students in your school, but did you have any Jewish neighbors, or is it entirely...
No, we had no Jewish neighbors. This was in a very, very Christian neighborhood.
Were your parents from Vienna, or did they move there when you were
My
born?
mother and father both were born in Poland.
Okay.
But when World War I broke out, my father was inducted in the army, and my mother fled with her family to escape from the oncoming Russians, who were very cruel, and that was another story.
May I interrupt for 1 second? At that time, where mother and father and relatives lived, it was part of the Austrian Empire.
Austrian-Hungarian Empire.
So it wasn't Poland.
Right.
It was Poland, but it's
It was part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire.
So back to school, do you have any specific memories of what you would do with your friends for fun, or when you weren't studying, or with your family? What sort of activities did you do?
What did we do?
Yeah. Like after school, what would you do
Oh,
for
well,
fun as a
well,
child?
yeah, well, we had, after school, a lot of times we would meet together, we would go for walks, go to the park, go to, in the summertime, to the pool. I was never a swimmer, but I did go to the pool. And we went to the movies. You know, Vienna was a big metropolitan city, very, you know, advanced compared to other places.
Would you go on vacations with your family in the summer?
My father and mother never had time for going to vacation. But I myself went to visit relatives when I was 11 years old to Poland to meet them. And I traveled by myself 17 hours, all by myself, with a suitcase to visit my relatives. That was a lot because I'm still surprised that my parents would let an only child go. But I was very independent in a way, you know. As I said, I was like grown up as an 11-year-old. It's just hard to believe. And then another year, just before Austria was annexed, I also went to Poland and I was 13 years old.
And did you enjoy seeing your relatives?
Did I what?
Did you enjoy seeing your relatives?
Oh yeah, I was like the star because I came from Vienna and all these people were like small town people, you know. But I also enjoyed, I had a cousin who studied in Vienna and who lived with us. She was studied to be a school teacher. And when I spoke to her some years ago, she survived, and I said, grandchildren go to Montessori, that's a new concept. She said, what are you talking about? I studied the Montessori method of teaching. Are you familiar with it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she said, and I taught you a lot of these things. So in other words, I was about 5 years old and she come back and teach me all that stuff, and I didn't know till she told me how all that was instilled in me, and I didn't know it.
What was your favorite subject to learn in school?
Pardon me? You have to speak a little louder
I'm
for me.
sorry. What was your favorite subject to learn in school?
History and geography.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also pretty good at composition, German.
Did you
I
have
didn't
any-
like math,
No.
which is a big mistake.
Did you have an idea of what you might want to do after school when you were younger? Like what you might want to...
Did I what?
Did you have an idea of what job you wanted to do?
Oh yeah. I wanted to be a lawyer because I felt if you're an attorney, you can take innocent people who've been incarcerated wrong or been charged by mistake and you know, liberate them.
Mm-hmm.
And then once, when I was a young girl, I once met a boy and I said to him, and he said, what do you want to be? I said, I want to be a lawyer. He says, I don't like women who are too smart. So I thought it was pretty funny. Because in those days, I guess you sort of had to play dumb, you know?
Mm-hmm. What language did you speak?
But other language?
Or what language did
Oh,
you speak?
we learned French in school.
Okay.
And I also
And
knew
with-
some Yiddish. My parents didn't speak Yiddish,
Mhm.
but sometimes to each other they did, and I picked it up. But when I came to this country, actually, is when I learned more Yiddish, because in New York,
Mm-hmm.
there was still a lot of Yiddish spoken.
And so what language did your parents speak to you?
German.
German. Okay. So you were learning 3 languages. I mean, you spoke German and learning French, and then you knew a little Yiddish.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your parents a little bit and what they were like?
Okay. Well, my mother was very business oriented. Actually, when my father was in the army in World War I, and she fled with her family to Vienna, she had to sort of make a living for herself, and she was like, you know, in those days, I don't know whether it was black market or so, you had to have everything on coupons, you know, during the war. You couldn't just go and buy. And she managed to get some, from what I heard, because I wasn't born then, that she managed to get food and be able to sell it to people and make a living that way, you know, bringing food to people. Then when my father was discharged from the army, she sort of had established like a little business, and the business grew and it became a very nice business. And my father had become a very modern man, and it just started slowly to, you know, to prosper.
And you said you were only child, so were you really close to your parents? And she was
Very
helping-
close. My father just thought the world of me.
Mhm.
I know we had a bookkeeper, and sometimes my father was very good at math. I didn't inherit that from him, you know. That wasn't in the genes. So when the bookkeeper sometimes showed him the books, you know, and he could see at a glance that she had made a mistake, he says, Rosie, come over here, he says, and he said to the bookkeeper, see, I bet my daughter, at that time I was maybe 9 or 10 at the most, would know faster than you that you made a mistake. I felt bad for the woman because, you know, it wasn't really the nicest thing to say, but so he thought I could do anything.
And you said you didn't have time to celebrate like Shabbat.
Well,
or-
we did like, see, before my parents opened the retail business, they had only a wholesale business. So when Shabbat came, they were able to light candles on time and have the thing. But once they had the business didn't close till 7 or 8, so it was too late to do that.
Did you have any other family traditions?
Any what?
Family traditions?
Oh, well, my parents observed, you know, the yard side, which means when people died, if they knew it or they picked a date to observe it. We observed Hanukkah a lot, with the candles. We observed the Passover was a big thing, to have a Seder. And we always had strangers in our house for the Seder. The one I remember the most is there was a man who was partially blind. I remember him with the white cane and 2 children. And they came for quite a few Sidurim to us because the man was widowed, the children were orphans, and they were invited to our Seder. And actually that made the Seder very sad for me because I felt so bad for this man and his family. But that was a big mitzvah. Mitzvah means a special deed to have people like that at your table.
Did you have any favorite, were any of the holidays your favorite? Did you prefer celebrating a holiday over another holiday?
Favorite holiday?
Yeah.
I think Hanukkah was nice, where you played all the games and things like that. And Passover, I really not that fond of matzahs. I would say my husband likes matzahs. I'm not fond of matzahs. But I love biblical stories. I used to see the Christian children had their religious training in the school. I had to go to another school that combines several schools where Jewish children had to meet once a week to get their religious education. And I loved the biblical stories. I wasn't good at reading and writing Hebrew, but I loved the stories.
And did you have any friends when you went to that school?
Yeah, we met. These are the people who did not live in our neighborhood. So it's not like I saw them often, but we were very friendly with each other when we met.
Did you feel more connected to them because they were Jewish?
No, I felt very connected to all my Christian girlfriends. They were my best friends. They came to our house, I came to their house, and even though there was always this undercurrent that I knew I was different because I was Jewish, there was still, we had a lot in common. We talked about the same interests and same things.
Do you have any specific memory with your friends?
Specific
a really
memories?
Good memory together?
Not really a memory, it's just we had fun together. We exchanged, in those days they had cards of movie actors, just like you have baseball cards today. And we used to exchange cards, and we played different ball games, and the school had a lot of hiking excursions in the summer. The Austrians were big on that. So we had nice, you took along like picnic lunches, and that was nice.
So is Vienna a big city at that time? Would you call it a big city? Yeah.
I forgot what, about 1 million people, I think.
Probably more than that.
More than 1 million.
How did you get around town? Would you just walk, or?
No, well, we did a lot of walking, but also the trolley cars took you everywhere. And there were taxis. On a Sunday when we would visit my father and mother's family, sometimes they lived a whole hour away in a very Jewish district. So sometimes if my father was in the mood, he'd call go to the taxi stand. Sometimes we took the trolley car.
So when you visit your family, you got to see life, a more Jewish community?
Yeah, that area was a very Jewish community. I didn't really see we just visited the relatives, but I knew that it was a very Jewish community.
And you could see the differences between where you
I saw some religious Jews with the earlocks, and I saw, somehow the women were dressed some very traditional.
So you said you went to the movies a lot. Did you have a favorite movie?
Well, my favorite was Shirley Temple.
Shirley Temple.
With the light. And a lot of the kids in my class, they all wanted to look to Shirley Temple. So some of them, the mothers had to work on those curls. I never had Shirley Temple curls.
Did you imagine that when you grew up you would be staying in Vienna, or did you want to move away?
It just never occurred to me that I would be anywhere else because that was my home.
Did you want to travel more though? You said you traveled to Poland to visit your relatives. Was that something you were interested in doing, is traveling?
Traveling? Yeah, I would have liked, I was too young to really think about all that, but the rest of the world interested me. It sounded, I like to meet new people. And I was never shy or afraid of meeting people. Some children are very they're shy. I wasn't shy. And I even tell my children and grandchildren, used to always tell them, always ask and always do, and the worst people can say to you is no if you ask for something or want to do something. Just give it a try.
Did you have one specific person that was a great influence to you, or would you say your parents were that?
No, I think my cousin who worked in my parents' business was a big influence on me.
You looked up to her?
I don't know, my parents thought she was too, how should I say, too adventurous and too, of course much more mature than I am. But certain things when I think about it, and also my cousin Clara, that I told you about, who was the Montessori teacher, she lived with us for several years.
And what was your cousin's name?
My cousin who worked in my parents' business, her name was Binnie, Binnie. Her real name was Sabine. And her brother became very, very well known in Israel. He really built the land because when he came and his wife, it was all swamps. And in those days, when he went to Israel, he was 17, she was 18, and they only allowed women to go to Israel if they were married, the British mandate. So they made a make-believe marriage, and they said they'll get married, and then they'll separate in Israel and Palestine then. But they stayed together, and they had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and he became very, very, he actually, I don't know if it's known or not, but the Secret Service in Israel that goes all over the world, they captured Eichmann. You ever hear of Eichmann? He was a big killer, Nazi. And they captured him in Argentina or in Brazil? Argentina. And he was one of the people who went over there to get him.
Wow. Did you want to go visit him in Israel when you were a girl? Did you want to go see Israel?
I was too young to think about going to Israel. But my husband and I, in later years, we went to Israel several times.
Do you remember what your family's political views were at the time?
What they were?
Their political views.
Oh, political views. Well, they were what's known here, I guess, like Democrats. So do you think that the changes that started happening with the Nazis, did you notice it happen immediately, or was it a slow progression of discrimination? Well, there actually was a big illegal Nazi party in Austria for years. They believed in this whole ideology. So when Hitler annexed Austria in March 13, 1938, they even had their uniforms in the closets, and from one day to the next, everything shifted. It's the most amazing thing. And on the main street where we lived, we were more on a side street, you could hear them, the Germans were marching with tanks and artillery and everything for hours, and the roar of the people saying Heil Hitler, which means hail to Hitler, for hours, from one day to the next. And then 2 days later we were arrested, but I don't know if you want that segment now.
No. We'll get that next time.
Yeah.
But even before the Nazis came to Austria, there were people who would discriminate against you, and
Well, people somehow always had an anti-Jewish attitude.
Mhm.
The majority, I'm not saying everybody, but the majority of people really didn't like the Jews. And whatever bad befell them, it was the fault of the Jews. They always blamed the Jews.
Were you confused as a child, realizing that people?
It was not a good feeling, but
Mhm.
I had a lot of loving support from my parents and from my relatives. And the girls I was friendly with were just close friends. But sometimes, just like I said, this woman telling her child to go down to the Jew to shop suddenly made me feel very much like an outsider.
Mhm. What would your parents tell you when you told them?
I don't think I even told them that
Mhm.
because I don't know. I don't know, but I didn't say it because I didn't want them to feel bad, or I knew there's nothing they could do about it.
Mhm. Did your family have meals together?
Well, we had in the retail store besides our apartment upstairs, we had a kitchen, and we had a woman who was like a housekeeper, but she also helped in the business to wait on people when they were busy in the store. So we a lot of times had separate meals during the day, and that was actually the main course because that's what Europeans did in those days. The main course was during the day. And then in the evening, we basically had just sandwiches and simple things. And then usually when the store closed, we would have that up together.
Is there a favorite food you had?
Was there one?
A favorite food or a meal?
Oh, favorite, yeah. I was a very poor eater. I was a terrible eater. But when I see sometimes children, the way they eat today, I wasn't that bad. So my favorite meal was a kind of a dumpling. It's made from flour and with mushrooms, special kind of mushrooms. They look like little umbrellas. I don't know the name of them here. Do you know the name?
Eierschwammer.
Yeah, that's in German. It's just egg mushrooms, and a like a Boston salad lettuce with that.
And would your mom make that, or would the housekeeper?
Well, both my mother and the housekeeper usually whenever they took turns.
So when you did have time to celebrate Shabbat, would you have a different meal than normally during the
Yeah,
week?
usually on Friday night we did have sort of a more like chicken soup and
Traditional.
a traditional Jewish kind of meal, which is chicken soup and chicken and some vegetables and different potatoes, you know. And like for Hanukkah was a big thing was potato pancakes. That was a big meal.
So did you live right near the store?
Yeah, we lived in the same building.
Okay. So
That's
it
why
was,
we lived in that neighborhood because it was convenient.
so it was like an apartment,
A large apartment building, yeah.
and
The
did you-
store was on the main floor and we lived on the second floor.
Okay. So you were always around it and always involved. So it's right there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what did the store sell? You said a retail, so
Well, the wholesale part was my father's business. That was eggs. He sold to grocery stores, you know.
okay.
Okay. And the retail store was like a general food store, like everything. But they specialized especially in eggs because my father could get them wholesale from his wholesale part, and it was a big draw because they were cheaper than someplace else.
Okay. And so then, everyone who came to the store would be not Jewish because of the
Yeah,
neighborhood you lived in.
there wasn't one Jewish customer.
But they didn't discriminate your family or didn't shop there because you were Jewish.
No, because it was to their advantage to come to the store because we were cheaper than
You were
other
cheaper.
people. So that's where the discrimination ended because it was to their advantage to shop in the place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if there were two other businesses next door, they wouldn't come to us.
Right. So you were an only child, but did you want siblings? Was that something that you were sad that?
Not
You
really,
had-
because I was the star, because I was the youngest.
You like
and
being
everything-
spoiled.
Everything revolved about me, and I never missed siblings.
Yeah.
And my cousins became like my siblings, you know.
Mm-hmm. So you're interested in history, you said.
Pardon me?
You were interested in history? History?
You were interested in history.
Oh, history. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Were those the books you would read? Would you read about history, or
Yeah,
would you?
I loved history. I was very intrigued with history.
Why? Do you? Any particular reason?
Any particular? It just sounded so interesting, you know. All these queens and kings and different countries and different customs, and actually, you know, it was basically just like a junior high school, you know. We didn't go into any really deep things about it, you know, dates and who reigned and who was beheaded and what kind of wars they had and stuff like that.
What part of history were you interested in then? Were you like interested in ancient?
What's that?
Were you interested in ancient history?
Ancient
Or
history? Well, that was the
more,
biblical history in
Mhm.
Hebrew school, yeah.
that and
Yeah.
that?
I was intrigued by like Queen Esther and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff.
Well, what was Hanukkah like in your family? What did you do for Hanukkah? You said it was one of your hero
What
holidays.
did you do for Hanukkah? Well, my mother basically did a lot of potato pancakes,
Mhm.
and my cousins, when they were younger, they all came over and they couldn't. She had several frying pans going with potato pancakes, and we had applesauce, and we played different games, you know, different Hanukkah games, and I think Passover was interesting, you know. I never, as I said, I didn't care for matzahs, but there were certain traditional foods that my mother made.
Did your family keep kosher?
They kept kosher up to a certain time. Then the kosher butcher, who was not too far away, moved. He didn't have enough customers, I guess. And it became too difficult for my mother to get kosher meats.
Mhm.
But we never mixed milk with meat.
Okay. And then on Passover, you would keep.
We'd only
For
have
Passover.
matzah. Yeah.
Alright. Did you go to your friend's house though and eat there? And would they serve you food that wasn't kosher?
Well, when I went to a friend's house, I would sometimes have a meal. Yeah, that wasn't kosher. It wasn't pork, but it wasn't kosher.
Mm-hmm.
I also used to love the Christmas because all my Gentile girlfriends had Christmas tree, although I never envied their Christmas tree because I knew I wasn't supposed to have it. But I enjoyed going to their house and helping them decorate their tree
Mm-hmm.
and be invited. Like, they had delicious little chocolate figurines and things, and when they take it down, we'd have some of that.
Mm-hmm.
That I enjoyed.
So that was a good time of the year.
That was at Christmas time, yeah.
Did you go and celebrate Easter with them?
Easter, no,
No.
no, not
Just
Easter.
Christmas.
Although I would get sometimes from them some decorated Easter eggs.
Mm-hmm. And did you have a few girlfriends, or did you have a large group of friends?
I was friendly with quite a few girls, but I had two very close girlfriends. One overnight didn't know me. The other one was very nice. She was really of Czech ancestry. Her parents came from Czechoslovakia.
Mhm.
And in another segment then, because she was very nice after Hitler came. She was the only one who stuck to me. But not that anybody should know, it had to be secretly.
You visited her.
Well, that comes in another segment.
What was her name?
Her name was Vera.
Okay.
Vera. V-E-R-A.
And the other friend you were close to,
Well,
what was her name?
her name was Edith.
Edith?
But I didn't know it till I found out later. Her father was a long-time illegal Nazi, and so was her brother. He was in the youth movement.
Did you have any favorite toys?
And
The
the
shop?
favorite toy? Yeah, I don't know. They had certain toys that I had a nice doll. I had, they had different kind of things. They had these things with the sticks that you go up and down with a little, it's not a spool, I forgot what it is. We played some ball games, and we, people didn't have so many toys, today they all have too many toys.
Would you, when you were home and not with your friends, would you play by yourself?
I never stayed by myself, I was never alone.
Would you like to be?
As a matter of fact, I had trouble with that even later in life, that
Yeah.
I didn't like to be alone because I was always surrounded and,
So you'd either be with your friends or your parents or relatives.
except I went on that trip to Poland, which I can't believe
Right.
today that I did that. And there was even very interesting, two interesting incidents. When I was 11 years old, my relatives, my mother's brother had a very big textile store, where you sell yard goods. So they thought they'd give me a favor, and they gave me 3 beautiful pieces of fabric to take home. And they said to me, you had to go to borders to declare things. They said, when the custom inspector says to you, do you have anything to declare? You just say no. They figured 11-year-old child, they're not going to look in my suitcase, But lo and behold, they did. And they pulled out these 3 pieces of fabrics, and they said to me, you lied, we're taking you off the train, and we're not going to let you come back on. And that was at the border. Okay, so they took me off the train, and I saw in another room a woman was being told that she had a big bun, like a hair bun. They were taking pieces of money out of her hair, She was a real smuggler. This was paper money. So when I saw that, I said, well, I guess I'm doomed. I guess they're going to put me in jail. I don't know what they're going to do. So, but then they let me go, and they said, they take the fabric, and then in Vienna, your father's going to have to pay a big fine. Okay. So I went back on the train, and I came to Vienna, and when my parents picked me up and my father heard that story, he was furious at his brother-in-law, because they said, how can you take a child, given no matter how nice the fabric? So I think they fined my father, never got the fabric back, I didn't need it, but I survived that too.
So what did you do on your way there by yourself? Did you read?
Well, they put me back on the train, and I went, and one year, the other year when I went, I forgot which was the time, got these 2 years a little mixed up. The train, Vienna had 4 different train stations. In those days, Baltimore only has one. So the train was reassigned to another station, and my parents didn't know it. So when I arrived, there was no one to get me. And I had this huge suitcase, and I wasn't concerned. Somehow people helped me get on the streetcar, and I went home, and someone helped me get off the streetcar, and I called my parents from somebody else's store, and they were frantic because they were at the other station, they thought I was surviving there, and I survived that too. So I was really not a child the way other children were at that age.
Other children would probably be scared and worried.
Yeah,
Can you remember your earliest memory?
my
Your child-
earliest memory. I don't know what, I really don't know.
Don't have a specific.
The only thing certain things stand out, and I remember that my mother, maybe I was 5 years old, but I think my memory goes back further, but that impressed me so much. Said one day, I know my mother died, and people came in and said, how would you know your mother died? She lived in Poland, and we lived in Vienna. She said, I can feel it, she died. And the day later, she was told her mother had died at that time. So I believe there's some kind of connection maybe that we don't understand. And I remember my mother, people coming in, and mother kept saying, I know she died.
Did you go to a funeral?
No, we couldn't go, but we went the following year for setting the gravestone.
And was that hard for your mother?
Yeah, it was sad because she hadn't seen her for many years. She couldn't get away, and it was a long, ride in those days.
What about your father's parents? They weren't?
My father's mother died in childbirth, and his father died before World War I. So I never.
Did you get to meet your grandmother, your mother's mother, before she died?
No, I never
No.
knew.
We have 42 minutes.
Already?
Can you think of anything?
Is there anything else you want to ask me for that segment?
If there's just anything you can tell us that you think is important for your childhood, or things that happened before the war that you think we should know.
Things that happened before the annexation.
Yeah, before.
Well, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it, but
Or just any other memories that you know are important to you and that you still think about and remember.
not really before the war. It's just, I don't know, my life just flowed along, like children do. You have classmates, you have a few good girlfriends. Your parents were nice. I could never do anything wrong.
Yeah. Did you ever get in trouble with them?
Never.
Never? And
Oh, no, never. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. My father never hit me, but my mother might have given me maybe a smack across the behind. But I really don't know what I must have done something pretty bad if I did it. I think somehow there's something in my memory about that, but
yeah.
I don't know what it was.
And you were a good student, so you never got in trouble at school.
No, I never had trouble in school. I was like teacher's pet.
I have a clarification question. You mentioned your two close friends growing up, right? Edith and Vera?
I remember my close friends, yes.
And was Edith the one who said her
Edith
father
was the big Nazi
was
family, yeah.
okay, and Vera
And Vera was the Czech girl whose parents
Okay.
came from Czechoslovakia
got it.
and were not, they were Catholics too, but they were not so, no, actually they were Protestants, they were not Catholic. She was not so indoctrinated against Jews.
So if Edith was your close friend, would you go over to her house and?
Yeah, we lived across the street, she'd been in my house, I'd been in hers. And as a matter of fact, New Year's Eve, when I was a little older, maybe I was 12 or 13, her parents had gone out and we stayed home. And the custom in Austria was you took a basin of cold water and you heated some kind of lead on a large spoon over a flame, and then you drop that boiling liquid metal into a bowl, and it formed some kind of figure or mass, and then you interpreted that to know what your future would bring.
And do you remember what it said your future would bring?
I don't think I could have foreseen that.
Were you ever, but you said that her father, they were Nazis, but you never suspected that they, were different or anti-Semitic or discriminated against you? You never felt unsafe at her house?
I never saw one.
You never felt like unsafe or discriminated at Uta's house because of her
That they were
family?
not- No, I really didn't know it till it came out
Mm-hmm.
that then people said, oh, didn't you know they were illegals already way back? It's hard to imagine that someone could be your friend and then, the next day, but then later, there's another story. It has to come next time because it's really not that period.
We'll get to that.
Because you're asking me about the family, how things change.
Yeah. So is there anything else you did besides going to the movies or reading books or just hanging out with your friends? Anything
Well,
else
I don't
you
know,
did?
we always hung out together. I guess we talked, girls talk. Or sometimes maybe we even checked maybe on the homework together or things like that. I don't know. I don't know what kids do today. I guess all they do is text.
Did your friends ever ask you about what being Jewish meant, or
No.
they were not interested, or you just
I think at that age they don't
didn't care?
care.
Yeah. So religion was never, you didn't really know about.
No,
Their
she never
religion.
explained anything.
Mhm.
The only thing I know is that they went to church and that when they had, at Easter time they had processions, they carried Christ through the streets and so on. And so that emphasized more that the crucifixion of Christ was the fault of the Jews.
Right.
So did I leave anything out? I don't know.
Plenty.
Huh?
Plenty.
Plenty, why don't you tell me what I forgot?
Oh.
Well, we can include it maybe next time.
You guys have any questions?
I don't think so. I'm sure we'll think of something later.
Yeah.
But
We can always.
I think we covered a lot.
Well, thank you so much
Thank you so
for
much.
taking the time.
I was glad to help out and meet you ladies, and I'm gonna get Werner to fill me in. You can still maybe add it next time.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Because it's very emotional and sort of my mind draws a blank,
Right, of course. But yes, thank you so much. We're excited to come again.
Yeah, I don't know with the calendar because the fellas are coming next Sunday. And how soon do you have the interviews be completed?
Let me go look.
There's a certain
What time frame are you working on?
I think